What up, meatheads? It's Travis Stockstill, a.k.a. American Butcher. And every time I say that, a.k.a. American Butcher, my team captain cringes a little bit and makes fun of me for it, which is fine, and it is right. I did not bestow this title upon myself. It was available when I created Instagram and etc., etc. I will also recognize 100% that a lot of my success has to do with Instagram marketing, and whatever you call success, I don't know. I just am a modest butcher living a modest life. Anyway, this is the Meat Block Podcast, a weekly podcast by butchers for everyone. And I guess this week's episode is by a butcher for everyone, because I am riding solo. I am flying with one wing. Time to do another and fly with both. And if you're new to the Meat Block Podcast, again, thank you. You want to know what we're all about? I suggest you start at episode 1 and listen all the way till now. And if you are a current listener, then how about you do that anyway? But I just want to say that it goes with saying, because I'm saying it, that this is a show by a butcher for other butchers. And I, even though I'm a family man and I've never swear in front of my son, I never raise my voice, I never do anything, don't tell dirty jokes. It's like the old saying, like people say, like, oh, Howard Stern, would he let your kids listen to your radio? And he's like, no, it's not meant for them. So if you're adverse to adult language or topics, I apologize. And I just recommend that you, this may not be for you. And I'll give you a minute to, during the intro, decide if you want to stay and listen.
Good cutting enhances the quality of good meat. Poor cutting results in an inferior piece of meat, regardless of quality.
All right, now that all those, bitches are gone, what do you guys want to talk about? What do you want to rap about? Spread each other's ears, put in a retainer, and talk about the cutest boys and girls that we know. Because right now, it's just us popular kids at the sleepover. Put some whipped cream in people's hands, then tickle their face, and then when they go up to slap that tickle, they get a handful of whipped cream. We could also try putting someone's hand in some warm water. See if they wet themselves, and then everyone could make fun of you as you call your mom and apologize and say, Mom, could you pick me up? And your mom's like, no, Travis. I mean, no random person. Son, you got to stop doing this. And I say, I'm not doing anything. I don't know what happened. I was, I controlled it for like a week, and then, and that's why you thought you could spend the night at someone's house, is because you brought your plastic shorts, your rubber shorts. If that doesn't work and they don't go tinkle with the warm water, you could always just, pee on their crotch and lie and said that did. Again, if you're new to the show, welcome to the Meat Block. This episode will be storytelling format. Jeez, I haven't even had my first drink yet. I'm about to, though. You know what that means. The end of the episode is going to be a surprise. I can't wait to see what happens. You can always tell when I get back from a break, when I get up and do something, because my 2 dogs that are laying right next to me will be active at that point, because when I get up, they think it's their turn to get up. And then when I sit back down, they're still like, hey, I'm walking around, I have long-ass nails, and it's clickety-clack time on this linoleum. So, recently, someone asked me, what is some of the gnarliest injuries you've seen in this industry? Now, I've told those stories over the course of the show, but I haven't isolated them into one episode. I will tell some of those stories. Again, they may be different from the first time I told them, probably because I'm lying. And my attention to detail is more on the elaborate side. Because when you retail something that happened into your life, and it becomes a story, and when you tell it, it becomes fiction. So the theme of the story may stay the same, but the facts may be in different places. I was explaining to a coworker of mine, let's call him Zach Brewer. Actually, that's too obvious. Let's call him Zach Micro Brewer. That when I sometimes tell a story, instead of making all 10 characters and with their various names like Justin, Corey, Michael, Jake, Aaron, John, Scott, other Scott, I just may refer to all those people as Jeremy. And we all know what a Jeremy is. It is a allegory for someone who has let you down in this industry. And if your name is Jeremy, I'm sorry, but your parents should have named you a better name. Maybe consider going by your middle name or your initials. So when I tell these stories and I say the character's name is Jeremy or this Jeremy or etc., it is not always the same person, but for storytelling's sake, it will be just a nameless, worthless face you put in there. Now, I may rag on a bunch of Jeremys, but the important thing is, or the thing to remember is that this industry needs someone like Jeremy. Because as much as they, try to cut off your finger, steal from you, or talk back, pee on the toilet seat, take too many smoke breaks, show up to work dope sick, say inappropriate stuff about your wife, not realizing it's your wife, show you pictures of them having sex, tell a racist joke, ask you for a ride to work because you're too polite to say no because their car's in the shop, find out their car's broken, and now you just give this asshole a ride to work every fucking day. Also, Jeremys will stay late, have their schedule changed, clean the blood pit, pop guts in the rendering barrel, clean, and do a large slew of other things that are outside of the normal butcher, slaughterhouse, packing house, retail, smokehouse, whatever regimen. Someone asked me, what was one of the gnarliest things I've seen injury-wise in this industry? And it made me think of several stories. So a large problem in this industry is cold storage space and rail space if you're working with a rail. That you always need more than you have, and you always need to compact what you have to make it smaller, to fill up and make more available room. When you have a 11-foot carcass whole beef rail and hanging lambs on it, to utilize your cooler to the best of its ability, we would make trees. Take meat trees. Because on lamb, every trolley is about a foot apart or less, but usually a foot apart for the lambs to, that's how close you could get them on a rail when they're next to each other. But when you want to pack your cooler, because let's say you got 40 feet of rail, that essentially means about 40 lambs or so, and you want to free up some trolleys. So it's easy to put on a 10 meat tree to stuff it with 12, 11 lambs. Zip tie their back legs together and only hook one of the legs through the tree. And then if you have an 11-foot rail, you could double tree them and end up with 25, 30 lambs hanging on one single trolley. So imagine a meat tree, which I think you know what it looks like. It hooks onto a trolley with a hook, and a lot of people use them for organs. A lot of people use them to put pig heads on. When people break, they put primals on them. It's to free up carcass, or to free up cooler space, essentially, in whole animal productions. Now you got two of those, and you got an 11-foot rail. And how do you stack it with lambs? Well, you don't want to start at the top because that'd be a terrible tree, because like all trees, you want to be pointing at the top and flare out. Like that classic tree I'm sure some of you have dying in your living room right now. So you start at the bottom, and you build up, do your layers, go up. But when it comes getting to the top of this tree, you need some stairs. Usually trimming stairs, which is, portable stairs that allow you to get around the carcass, or skinning platform stairs, which are very movable. Now you got the girth of the tree. it could be 5 feet long or 5 feet wide. And you need to get the lamb on the top. So you end up doing this weird bend over and you're off balance, standing on an uneven platform portable stair to get to about the 11-foot mark of the tree, which is really about like 9 feet because the negative space and the trolley and things like that. You're really not too terribly high up. You may be 4 feet off the ground, 6 feet off the ground. Nothing, you would survive if you fell. So we're skinning lambs. It was my brother, Jeremy, other Jeremy. There was 5 of us skinning at 5 different lamb skinning stations, punching them out, having races to see who could skin the lamb the fastest, having a good old time. And then we would pass it off to someone and they would take it to they would land it on the rail, take it to the final rail, trim it, wash it, let it cool down. And then to free up space, so we had more room in the cooler, they would don a shimmering white coat, shoulder the animal, and place it on this tree. So we're skinning, we're punching and fisting all these lambs out. In my lamb skinning station, I used to save the back foot of one of the animals so I can know how many I did at the end of the day. That is by no means important to this story. It's just something about me. And as I'm turning into the bone collector with these trotters, I hear and screaming. And Jeremy got himself. He was leaning over a little bit too much. Maybe our system was flawed. Maybe it was a little bit too dangerous. But he slipped and was suspended on the rail with 2 hooks sticking in him from one of the trees. This was a big Jeremy. This is like a 300-pound Jeremy. It took all of our might to lift him up, counteract it, and get him back on his feet. Now, in fairness, he was still mostly supporting his own weight. It was just at an awkward angle, and he wasn't like some crazy, kid with gauges who's doing that weird suspension for like spiritual reasons. It was mild, but it was still insane. And the good thing those hooks went through, fatty muscles like your thigh and underneath your arm, which sounded fucking awful because he's lifting it up and it goes underneath in his tricep. Just a couple stitches, no major surgery, and a lot of disinfectant. So we were working with a couple of twin Jeremys. They were literal twins, and they didn't like each other. These were big old corn-fed mountain men who were actually like 18 years old, living in the hills of southern Vermont. I actually think they're from New Hampshire, but it doesn't matter. Jeremys are a traveling tribe. There's Jeremys right now in Australia and Iceland, Germany, Antarctica, anywhere where there's people, there's one. And the one brother was talking shit about the other one. Just like his brother was out, so he's like, so tell me about your brother. What, blah, 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 blah. And he somehow let it slip that his brother was into a girl and went to her farm, stuck a rock up his ass, and went skinny dipping and masturbated in the pond looking at her house. And as soon as I heard that story, it came and went. Now, weeks, months later, who knows, this was years ago, went by, and Jeremy got mad. At my brother, actually, not at me. And was, being a dick and being rude. And my brother said, hey man, what's your fucking problem? Do you still got that rock up your ass? He turned bright red with anger, rage, and embarrassment. A lack of trust. He had no idea who told this intimate story about his life, and now it's on a podcast. But it's okay because the name has changed. Or is it? I don't know. You decide. And he picked up a trolley by the hook end and whipped that fucking thing right at my brother. Now, my brother, being a nimble like fox, dodged that shit, and that hook went and hit the current floor boss who was running the floor. Surprisingly, this was not a fireable offense. Chickens. Work in chicken slaughter. It's wet. You use so much water. I can't even tell you how much water you use to kill a bird. We got trench drains everywhere, feather drains, blood pits, things like that. And you got the way we were doing it, we had ice bins, slush bins, where we're moving chickens in these big bins with a pallet jack from where they would get down to temp in the slush ice into the packaging area. And when you're cleaning at the end of the day, you got soap and feathers and blood and all this stuff pooling in these trench drains, and big puddles end up on the floor. And one time, this Jeremy was moving a pallet jack to go get a bin, but needed to get it over the hose. So he picked up the hose that was laying in this reddish, white, brown puddle of chicken feces, blood, and feathers. And holding the pallet jack with two hands, he put the hose in his mouth to get the pallet jack on the other side of the hose. It was beautiful. I worked at a place that had an unrefrigerated rendering room. And in the summertime, you would think that there was black curtains on the windows of the basement, but it was actually just flies. You could step on them, you could walk on them, and you would be about 2 inches higher than the actual floor level because of maggots and shit and stuff. And it was a gravity fed rendering room, so we had these big bins that we'd put in rendering chutes that we would, with hides, we'd dump them down this bin, and etc. And you need more space sometimes. When you run out of bins, you realize, I couldn't tell you the numbers right now without lying, but so many beef guts fill up so much bins. When you need more bin space, you need to do what I call popping guts. So rendering's not coming for another day. You still have, 30 head to kill, and you need more space. So you go down there. By you, I mean you have someone go down there. And Jeremy goes down there with a piece of rebar. And he stabs all the guts and deflates them and works them around so the gases escape. Oh, damn it, Milo, now people know I'm drinking. And shift them around. And they go blurp, blop. And all the gases expand because of the gases of decompensation and, bloating and things like that, which allows you more room to dump more viscera. It's an entry-level position. And the rendering room needs to be cleaned. I don't know how you clean a place like this. I think the USDA said this is unacceptable, which it was. But it's also so gross that they never wanted to go down there. But when you end up with fly problems up in your processing area because your basement is kept like a fucking horror house, they want to enforce some kind of rules. Now, this is Jeremy. This story, he made his own cleaning product, mixing his own chemicals of different cleaning agents and different soaps and a pump sprayer who would spray, but with also the natural chemicals coming off of the decomposition of the viscera, produced a pretty noxious and deadly gas. we didn't hear from him for a while, and he jokingly said, if you don't hear from me in a while, check on me. Well, we did. And he was throwing up and barely able to walk right outside the rendering door. And an ambulance came, and that was fun. Fire department came, and then we were written a ticket for using our forklift inside for the carbon monoxide, even though that isn't what caused this issue. But we also got a brand new electric pallet jack. Now, when I was working retail, I had a customer ask me about frozen product in our frozen case, because when we'd make stocks, we'd make demis, we'd make all these things, fill them up in quart containers, and then put them outside in a grab freezer where customers could buy it and then, use it at their own way. So we'd fill these up to a pound, put the weight on them. And this customer says, how much is this? I told him it's like, I don't know what it was. Let's say $5 a pound. And then he said, well, I don't want to, pay the frozen weight of it. I want to pay the regular weight. I don't want to be charged for the frozen product. And I was very confused. Then after talking, I was like, I'm confused here, sir. And he said, no, it's Jeremy. And I said, I'm confused, Jeremy. What do you mean? And he says, well, when you freeze it, it gets heavier. Back in my younger days of management, I was a little bit harsher than I am these days. A little bit more rough around the edges. I don't know if it's something to prove or if I truly just hated everybody. I said this mantra that I used to tell myself when I was coming up in this industry. I go to bed every night and say, when I lived in Vermont, learning these skills, once I realized it was going to be a career, don't fall in love, don't get stuck here, fuck everyone. I'd repeat that to myself as I go to bed. Because I want to separate myself from my emotions. And I think it had an adverse effect. It was horrible affirmations. And as a result, it made me not appreciate the situation I was in. It made me kind of a shitty person around people. Yeah. I think about that often. Not too often because I don't want to dwell on it, but I just want to recognize it. And in hindsight, you could look at things with not necessary clarity, but just through a different lens. And I was talking to this guy, and he was like, Travis, I didn't go like that. It was me being like, what's wrong? Like after berating someone and humiliating them in a horrible way. Which I know now, never have those conversations in front of the employees, blah, blah, blah. I was young and in my mid-20s and just had a little bit of power and was... I hadn't been humbled. And he's telling me, God, fuck. This guy's being all mopey. And I'm like, Jeremy, what's wrong? He's like, nothing. And knowing what is the issue is me because I was right in his ass. I pressed it. And he said, well, what would you do if someone was talking to me or talking to you like you were talking to me? And to get a laugh at the time, I said, Jeremy, I wouldn't be in your shoes to give someone that opportunity. And that's a horrible thing for me to have said. And it went over well. It got amazing applause. But I feel bad and not that good about that, even though I'm ragging and telling stories now, because the stories are what people want. It's the good. It's the stories about all the good times and bonds and things like that. Don't make good podcasts. It's the conflicts that do. And I tell the good stories too. I feel like I certainly have more educational episodes of my podcast. I enjoy talking with Brian Mayer and David about positive things in this industry. But also entertainment, you don't see movies about all the time something went right. Apollo 13 is a good movie because there was conflict. Something went wrong. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Jeremy. Jeremy uses the episode tarred, not tear. He makes up an excuse about why he can't come to work because his wife broke his leg, and then you see her the next day and she's fine. He doesn't know what a restaurant is. Has a pet snake. Wear pre-fitted, pre-tied biker bandanas. Wears a wolf on his shirt. Gives a gift card as a white elephant gift. Calls you every other name except for your own name. All right. If you enjoyed this episode of the Meat Block Podcast, which I'm sure you did, because come on now, it's fabulous. Please like, subscribe, and please leave a comment and review. Please tag someone on social medias about this show if you think they will be interested in it as well. And also, please subscribe to my Patreon, because I do episodes of the American Butcher podcast where it's like this, where it's just me rapping, except for it's more, you want to ask me a question, I will maybe dedicate a whole episode of the podcast to answer that question. And yeah, links will be in the show notes. Please follow Instagram, support the American team, Butchers of America, support the World Butchers Challenge, was the competition I'm coming up. I am competing in with the American team. I am one of 6. I am overshadowed by all these people. I am the Jeremy of the team, and my captain lets me know it. Until next time, keep your knives sharp and live in the Jeremy.